Kelly proves you don't need a straight line to build a powerful career. Sports, higher ed, nonprofits, she's carved her own lane every time. If you need proof that betting on yourself pays off, keep watching. And if you're wondering who she is, well, it's time to find out. Kelly, thank you so much for taking the time to join me here today on Passion Projects.
Yes, it's so good to see you again, and I'm so excited to do this.
Me too. Well, let's get right into it. I know that you've worked at the intersection of sports, storytelling, and impact for over a decade. When you look at the state of sports philanthropy today, do you think the industry is living up to its potential or is it falling short?
I think in any instance, you can say a little bit of both. I think that the landscape has so many wonderful things happening and so many amazing initiatives that are creating life-changing opportunities for the communities that they serve. But I think, especially in the US, when we look at sport philanthropy, a lot of things are siloed. A lot of things are, individual driven or corporate driven and really aligned with like what that person or that corporation has to get within their goals at the end of the day. So I think that we have so much investment in sport philanthropy and so much desire to create change through sport, but it's figuring out how to make a longer term impact, how to go deeper into the communities that are being served, impact more people, that I think we maybe haven't gotten a total handle on yet, and should be the things that we're thinking about when we think long term about where sport philanthropy is going and the good that we can do in that space.
In your opinion, where do you think sports philanthropy is going?
I really do think there is a lot of conversation about being more intentional in sport philanthropy and that longer term impact. I think because sport philanthropy has grown so much over the last several decades, and the investment in sports has grown so great over the last several decades, media right deals being a huge driver of that. There is so much money in sports at a baseline. There's so much that can be done there because of the investment that's been made in sports as a whole, that I think people are starting to think longer term about what an athlete foundation can do, what a corporate partner can do with organizations that are really stable, that seem like they're going to have long-term impact and programming. And so let's invest in that. And I also think socially, we are, as consumers, kind of expectant in a lot of ways for a team that we follow or a corporation that we buy from to have this CSR side of their work. And so as an audience, we are also driving the investment in sport philanthropy in a way that I don't think was happening as consumers, decades ago. So I do think that those conversations are happening, and it's just a matter of time when we see this like new era of sport philanthropy that is more intentional and longer termed.
Most definitely. And speaking of that too, you've built an impressive career across journalism, higher education, and now sports for good. Let's start big. What's the driving force behind all of it? And what has kept you anchored in purpose through all these different chapters?
My childhood and my family is basically my sole driving force. I always go back to that, and I think it's very obvious when I look at it on paper that is the thing that started me off in this world. I grew up at West Point, right outside the United States Military Academy. My parents both worked at the academy in college athletics. My mom was an athletic administrator early on in her career, and then continued working with cadet activities as a whole. And part of that was sports as I got older. And my dad was an assistant basketball coach there under several different head coaches. So I spent so much of my childhood at West Point at a sporting event, whatever that looked like. If it was a football game, a basketball game, a hockey game, soccer match, whatever, I was probably there. So I think that that instilled in me such a love of sport, because I got so much joy as a child from being in that world. But also as a cadet athlete, the expectation isn't that you are going to go pro. As a basketball player at West Point, the likelihood of you getting into the NBA is very small. not impossible, but it's smaller than you at a other Division I school, or, very distant from those Power 5 schools. So we always saw sport, and the way sport was kind of taught to me was that it was a vehicle to drive other things. It was a vehicle to teach communication skills, a vehicle to teach leadership, to build a team, to be a partner in something, to achieve common goals. And so I just always saw sport as that versus sport solely about competition and winning. And that's definitely part of it, but I don't think it's all of it. And so when I went out into the world and started to think about what my adult life looked like, I always had that in the back of my head. I went to college at Boston College, and I was not good enough to be a Division I athlete in anything. So,
I was right there with you. I completely, me too.
My high school basketball coach, I think, told me once he couldn't put a loose leaf paper under my feet when I jumped. So, and that's okay. I came to terms with that. But I decided to be and had the opportunity to be a manager for our men's basketball team. And so while that level of competition was amazing, it was actually around the time that BC moved into the ACC from the Big East. So my senior year, we were in the ACC. The competition level from Big East basketball and ACC basketball was unreal, and like I'd never seen before. But I think what really stuck out to me, given my background I was coming from, was here's these 18 to 22-year-olds, roughly age group, and have such an important thing in their life that's keeping them like tethered to education and thinking about where they're going to go in the world. And they're really using this as like a launching pad for that. And I just always was so inspired by what sport could do for a young student athlete just starting out and thinking about their career, the friendships that they made, the memories that they've made. I mean, they've made so many memories for me. I can't imagine what it must have been like for them on the court. So that always had a huge impact on me too. When I got out of college, I've always had a love for writing and for communications. And so I pursued journalism, and it didn't take very long for me to be like, I love this and I love being a storyteller, but I am so missing this sport piece in my life. And then just simultaneously, this was like 2008, 2009, the state of journalism was very fickle, very unstable, especially when we think of the recession happening, but two, the transition from print to digital, and what does that look like? It was hard to believe now, almost 20 years later, but it was a very real conversation of like, we're going to put all of our news online. We're not going to charge people for a story where, is print dead? Literally, we hear that all the time, but that was a huge fear. Is print dead? And so it just wasn't a great industry to be in at the time. And I went into higher ed communications at Columbia Law School, which was a, change up that I didn't expect happening, but it was such a wonderful eye-opening experience because I was working in a communications office that was supporting advancement and development. And I got to see that side of the work in where storytelling was used to engage alumni, engage donors, engage corporate partners. And it really opened my eyes to this other area of storytelling that I was not aware of as a journalist really at all. And Columbia too, as generous as they are with their benefits, paid for me to go back to school as well. So I was able to get my sport management degree at Columbia and really pursue what I had been missing for so long. And that's how I ended up becoming a sports information director at Manhattan College, and then eventually onwards into a few other places before landing with my own company, Kelly Carroll Communications now. So it's a very long and winding road. I know that was a long story short, but I think all of those things, and I think any storyteller or writer would tell you this too, everything that happens to you and all the decisions that you make are part of that story. So it's important to really think about all the things, all the building blocks, and how they got me to what I'm doing today, for sure.
Most definitely. How do you find that storytelling and sports have gone hand in hand? And can you recollect maybe some stories that stood out to you through the journey that you were taking as a journalist?
Well, I think storytelling and sports right now have never been more intertwined. And like I said a little earlier, those media right deals and that media investment in sports has really been a huge driver of that in terms of just a content perspective. We're going to put on, we're going to put on 4 or 5 days of programming for the Ryder Cup. What else are we going to tell people?
Exactly. Yes.
We have the NCAA tournament and we've got all of these games, but we also need to fill all these other platforms that we have with stories. So I think this is such an important time for the way storytelling is integrated into sport and vice versa. I think that when I think about women's sports specifically, and just a little tangent to that, I was teaching a class and we were talking about the evolution of women's sports and how social media has really supported that rise and growth. Not only like the success on the court in basketball and the success, if you're thinking of the Olympics and women's sports in the Olympics and how successful they've been for decades, the rise of social media really propelling women's sports in a way that I don't think anyone could have foreseen when I was little. And when you think of that from a storytelling perspective, women have always had to not only just be an athlete in the eyes of media, but also be mothers and daughters. And, she, also has a doctorate in education and this is what she does in her spare time. And I think people, for better or for worse, I think it wasn't intentional to really be driving women's sports, but people haven't always seen women as just the phenomenal athletes that they are. And so those stories were always coming along in parallel with women's sports rise and female athletes rise. And so now today, I was reading a report by Parity last year of how women athletes are so much more trusted as ambassadors. As athlete ambassadors, because people know more about them and people are following their content and they trust them more to kind of give them the full picture of what being an athlete is like. And I think that always stuck out to me as a storyteller because women are using that to their advantage. Okay, like I'm going to be able to have this platform to advocate for something, to show you what it's like to be a female athlete, to tell my story in a way that maybe no one's done before. And I'm going to use all of that to make people more interested in women's sports, to get us more visibility, to get us more games on TV, to get us equal, if not more money for the work that we're doing. And so I think storytelling has really driven that, and women have been able to like harness it and utilize it to their advantage, which has been really cool.
And when you talk about that too, it makes me think about even women in sports journalism as well, and how far we've come. Like I remember when I used to cover male sports and specifically Toronto Raptors, and being the only woman in the locker room and knowing that I understood sports. But I remember a mentor of mine had told me, it's for a woman, you have to know the history of the sport. You have to go beyond that, right?
Yep.
And for a male, it was completely different as well. And so to see the evolution of how women within sports journalism have come is truly phenomenal, as well as we see the rise of these women athletes too, to your point.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. And and as we've talked about, like you're advancing it for the next woman behind you and proving that we are so capable to do this work and to champion, the passions that we have, as your podcast is showing everyone. So yeah, it's been really nice to see. And I'm just turned 41 this year, and I can really say so much of that has happened in my lifetime. I've been able to kind of witness it firsthand, whether or not I had an awareness of it when I was little. It's been really inspirational to see just how far something like this has come in such a relatively short amount of time in context. But a lot of women working hard for us to be able to do what we want to do.
I completely agree with you. And I mean, I feel like we've made progress, but of course there's so much more to go. Yeah. But to your point, I am 40 as well. And so we've seen that transformation of where we were and where we are now. And to your point as well, am so thankful for those that have come before us and paved that path for us, for sure.
Yes.
And when it comes to your time at Columbia Law School, how was working in the space influence your perspective on both communications and purpose-driven messaging?
hmm Well, it really, like I said, it was the first time I had worked in a communications office. I really didn't
Mhm.
know what that all entailed until I got there. I thought I had some idea as a journalist what a communications person does, but I really didn't. And what was interesting for me at that time, communications at Columbia had been solely for advancement work. It was a vertical within development and advancement and alumni relations. But after maybe 2 years, it could have been less, of my time there, I think the school itself was realizing the importance of brand communications, of PR, the rise of social media again, and having a presence digitally. And so, communications team moved out from under development solely and began to support the entire school. And that was really eye opening because it showed me, one, that the school wanted to invest in doing this and they saw the importance of it. And then as we got to work, the value of that. We, and I, there's so much credit to a lot of other people. I'm not going to pretend that I was at the forefront of all of these pieces of the work. It's a really wonderful team that did a lot of this. But there was a new brand identity that the creative director developed, and really how that trickled down to like every piece of external collateral that we have, whether it was the website, social media, print assets. There was, the launching of even an Instagram account. We didn't even have that when I started. And I think it was, maybe 2016, we decided to launch an Instagram account for the school and figure out how we were going to tell stories there. Twitter had been our main social platform, and it had been mostly used for interacting with news media and trying to put our, faculty members forward as thought leaders in spaces and things. It really wasn't a brand communications tool at that point in time. They redid the entire website, as I said, and integrated all of those brand elements, made it more storytelling forward. A lot of alumni profiles, a lot of in-depth looks at the many clinics that Columbia has, a lot of the pro bono work that they do. And simultaneously in the world, a lot was happening. There was a lot of conversation around the elections at the time, constitutional law, First Amendment law. Columbia does a lot of work in climate change law. So it gave me a much broader view of the world and a much deeper understanding of how much I needed to know about the world to do my job effectively. And then because of all this really important work that the school was doing, we really had to rise to the occasion to tell all of those stories really effectively, whether it was writing a really good story, doing a really great social media strategy or digital media strategy to get it out there, making sure that all the right PR placements were happening, and then kind of tying it all up into like, how does this work into the bigger picture of Columbia Law School and the story that they're trying to tell to the world, whether that's alumni, prospective students, donors, the White House, whatever that looked like. And again, it was by no means just me. I was a supporter of all of this. There was a lot of really great people working on that. But I think those were really the lessons that I got out of working in a comms office of that magnitude and really working on an international scale. There was a lot of important human rights work also happening. And so it felt heavy and like you could really move the needle with the stories that you were writing or the, social media that you were doing. You were really helping a lot of people get some really great work done, and helping advance an amazing institution that's been around for, so much longer than almost as long as our country, basically. So yeah, it really just instilled in me the importance of what communications can be and do and the power that you can have to affect change.
Most definitely. And I hate to think back to the times that we're living in now too, and how much we want to affect change, but there is this whole notion of now looking at the bigger picture, the freedom of speech,
Mhm.
and as much as we have opinions, I mean, how can we translate that, and create an impact? Because as much as we want to create an impact for good,
Mhm.
there are these two sides of the coin, and it's just like the more we try to preach good, there's like this divide or the separation. And I think back to what 2016 was and
Mhm.
what 2025 is now, and it's two completely different worlds in my opinion. Love to get your perspective on, I guess, as time has evolved and where we stand now, and how we can get that positive message across, but with an understanding that we have the ability to speak out for
Mhm.
causes that we believe in.
Yeah, I mean, we have so much more ability to have a voice in so many more things than ever before, right? And I'm sure that 40 years from now someone will be saying the same thing. Like we have so much more power to use our voice. But it really is true. We have so many platforms that are accessible, that are free, that reach a wide audience. There are so many ways to manipulate in a good way those platforms
Mhm.
to target, who you want to speak to, and really just make an impact that someone 50 years ago would be like so confused about what we were talking. They'd be like, "So you write letters? You're writing letters to people?" And you're like, "No, I hit a button and I'm immediately reaching like the president of FIFA, or
Yeah.
some Taylor Swift. She can see all my things." Like it's just kind of wild when you really sit down and think about it in that way. And so I think that is something that we absolutely need to take advantage of,
Mhm.
even more than is already happening, in order to get that positive um, messaging out there and create bigger impact than we even are doing now. I think in addition to that, though, like communications and storytelling haven't changed
Mhm.
from the basics of what you need to do. You need to know who your audience is. You need to know at the end of the day what your goals are from what you're going to say, and then you need to create a strategy that's going to reach your audience and get you to your goals. You could even add in, what's your return on investment, but I won't even I won't even go that far.
Yeah.
But I think those basic things, I always go back to it. So cliche, but like if a tree falls in a forest and nobody hears it, did it make a sound? And I think we're still living in that world. If I put something out there with no regard to who I'm speaking to, or what my ultimate goal is, or what's going to happen if somebody actually does engage with it and it goes viral, then what do I do? What am I prepared for that? If we don't think of those things at the beginning,
Mhm.
we're not going to be prepared to make that impact. It won't go very far. It's the old the old adage of being in a comms office and someone's like, "Can you tweet this PDF?" And you're like, "That's not a strategy. That's just a thing that you're asking me to do." Um,
Yeah.
if comms people listening will know that joke very well. But so I think you always need to consider all of those factors. Consider your distribution of your messaging. Are people ready to hear what you want to say? Are they ready to listen? And you know, that if they're not, then whatever your messaging is, as great as it is, it could blow back on you,
Mhm.
and then people won't be ready to listen to you down the line. So you have to take all of those things into account, and you have to really stand by what it is that you're going to say. And no matter what happens after that, then I think you're in good shape. So basics are always still there. It's just really the format and the distribution that change and evolve. And if we can be flexible and ready for whatever that is, then I think we can really do a lot of good.
Yeah, I agree. And I also feel like you shouldn't live in this position of fear either. You should just be absolutely ready to, go out there and put yourself out there in the positive light that you want to create change, if that's the mindset that you want to go with, for sure. And when it comes to strategy, I mean, at Dream and Harlem RBI, you led content strategies in support of youth. Can
Yeah.
you share a moment or a story from the time that really crystallized why sport can be such a force for good?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many wonderful stories at Dream, and it was one of the things that I love the most about working there, in addition to the people I got to work with. The I really couldn't, there would not be enough time to sit and talk about each story that moved me, that moved people to be inspired by Dream and the community that it has. It really is such a wonderful place. I think something that really resonates with me and that I probably think about more often since I've left is the work I did with their alumni community. And just to go back a little bit, Dream started as Harlem RBI, as you mentioned, in 1991, and it was solely a youth sports organization. There were 2 abandoned lots in East Harlem, and volunteers came in and they turned them into multiple baseball fields. And they started a baseball league for young people in East Harlem as just a way to get them doing something that they enjoyed and cared about, and have kids be together and learn teamwork and things like that. There was just a passionate group of volunteers that wanted to do that for that community, which is awesome to think about, and its longevity now and how it really started with just passionate people. And then as Harlem RBI grew, it became an organization that had after school and summer programming in addition to this baseball and softball that it was providing. So reading and math, keeping kids staying on top of their schoolwork throughout the year, 365 days, making sure that they were avoiding that summer learning loss that happens when kids are out of school. And then eventually, I believe it was in 2008, they opened their first school. And now they have 7 schools, and they're in East Harlem and Mott Haven and Highbridge. And it's just, the growth of that organization is insane. But this is all to say, when I started at Dream, they were just getting ready to graduate their first high school class. So once they started their schools, they would grow a grade level every year. And then eventually, by the time I got there, they were having their first high school graduation. And we were really committed to making sure that those students who had gone through the schools felt as connected to the alumni who went through the Harlem RBI side of the programming, when it was, in its infancy, when Dream was in its infancy, that they all felt like they came from the same organization. Because I think given Dream's evolution, it could be really easy to feel like, well, I'm on the school side and I didn't have that programming experience, and vice versa. So we did so much work to, one, bring our Harlem RBI alumni into the fold. We started an alumni council and made sure that a lot of the alumni initiatives were, being driven by them, and that they had a much louder voice than maybe they had prior to having that council. I mean, COVID also threw a wrench into everything in terms of community building. So it was really a little bit, I think there had been some starts prior to COVID, but this was, COVID made us have to restart and redo a lot of that work. So that was one piece of it. Starting a newsletter to then, every year add that new class in and invite them to be part of this community digitally, and make sure that they're subscribing and that they're aware of all the events are going on. And then being really intentional about the way that we talked about our alumni. It was all of these people from the 30, now 35, but 30 plus years of Dream's work. Those were our alumni. They call them legends. They're all part of that same family. And then our alumni post-secondary office, which does the alumni engagement, also then grew within that communications work of saying, like, okay, now we're bringing this in person. We're having events. We're going to have or expand our networking event, and we're going to invite everyone from all the years. We're going to have a mixer. We're going to have a softball tournament. And so from that communication strategy, everything then came into real life. And that community, I have seen, even since I left, has grown leaps and bounds. And now the older alumni are mentoring the younger ones and giving them their first jobs, or bringing their CEO from their companies in to talk to their alumni. And so it's just been wonderful to see. And I think that if Dream's sport programming hadn't been as strong and made as much of an impact from when those older alumni were young, we wouldn't have that tie, and we wouldn't have that network of people that they have today. They have so many wonderful memories and stories about their times with Harlem RBI and an impact that it made on them. And those same people, you know, they a lot of them work for community organizations now. A lot of them also work for sport and community organizations, whether that's Laureus, Asphalt Green. You know, they're giving back via sport programming vehicles as well. So it's just, I know that's a kind of really broad, non-one instance answer, but I think that really stands out to me as something that I've been a part of that is just so evidently like sport has created this, and sport is making such a ripple effect and impact moving forward that it just hits home how powerful it is.
Yes, that's so accurate. It hits home because like this story that you're saying, it just like warms my heart so much just to see how where it started and how far it's come, and like it just continues to grow, and that like little impacts like that just go so
Yeah.
far, make such a difference. And to be a part of that is so amazing for you to witness how it's grown. Oh, it touches my soul.
Yeah,
Like
everyone should take a look at there's so many great alumni coming out of Dream. It's definitely a place that people should feel connected with and learn from, I think.
and going along those lines, I mean, in your opinion, what do you think the biggest opportunity in sports philanthropy is today, and what is the biggest challenge?
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest challenge, just to start with the bad news first, I guess,
Yeah, of course.
is just our silos. You know, I think there aren't a lot of organizations who have been around for a generation. You know, if you really
Mhm.
think about how many organizations have been doing this work to ultimately affect at least one generation, which is so hard to do as a nonprofit, there really aren't that many. So I think it's that longevity and that long-term impact, and then it's, you know, a lot of these nonprofits start with a niche need that they want to take care of, or a local community that needs impact, and it's hard to then build out and start to affect other communities and other people or other demographics. And so all this great work is happening in such important places and for people who really need it, but it's not even across the country or the world. And it's really generated by someone deciding that they want to help this specific cause, which again is wonderful, and we need more of that in the world. But it doesn't always become this 30, 40, 50-year organization that's been doing impact worldwide, to multiple places that need that support. So I think that's a huge challenge. It's really trying to figure out how to make deeper impact, longer term impact, when we don't really have a model for that type of growth and that type of evolution.
Right.
That said, I think that's where the opportunity lies too.
Yeah.
We have so much, like I said at the beginning, we have so much funding. There's so much, so many more people speaking about the importance of sports. There's so many more consumers looking for corporate social responsibility out of their corporations, but also their teams, their leagues. They really want people to put some of their ticket revenue, their concession revenue, whatever, into something that's good and that's going to make their communities better. And so I do think, you know, in addition to, we have the World Cup coming to the US, we have the Olympic Games coming to the US. Let's really take this time over the next 5 to 10 years and think about how we could be doing this bigger and for a longer amount of time. I love how many, you know, athlete foundations have a clinic and are able to give like such an inspirational afternoon or summer to a community that they play in or that they grew up in.
Mhm.
It's so awesome. And the memories that are made through those types of engagements are incredible. Let's make that bigger and let's do it more places. And who do we need to partner with, you know, to evolve into something that's multi-state, multinational, multi-community, whatever that looks like. And I know those are really lofty ideas and lofty goals. It's easier said than done. I know that, especially now. I think funding is just hard to come by in the economy that we have right now. So everyone that I talk to or work with in this space talks about how there need to be more creative solutions around finding funding or being able to build program. But I think this is a moment where we can really invest and double down on the investment that's been made in the past to help more people for a longer amount of time.
And this is your moment. Tell me more about Kelly Communications and the impact that you want to make as well.
Yeah. So as I said, when I came into the world as a young adult and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I loved communications and journalism. I loved writing. I loved telling people stories, but I missed the sport piece of it. And so I think throughout my whole career prior to a year ago, I was trying to figure out how to do that and how to put them all together and trying to find spaces where I could work and be able to really focus on that type of work and that type of content. And a lot of it started to come into my head at like what it could look like when I was a sports information director at Manhattan. I loved working with that population of young people, again, just like using sport as a vehicle to start the rest of their lives and how cool of a time that is for a young person. Really not fortuitously, but like unexpectedly, COVID happened.
Mm-hmm.
And we needed to communicate in a different way because we didn't have the games, the competitions that you would normally have as a sport information director. And so we started to just tell young people stories and what they were focused on through this really weird and difficult time, how they felt being apart, how they were finding ways to stay in touch with their teams and their friends and their school community. And that kind of led me to Dream because I wanted to really focus on raising people's voices and advocating for something because I enjoyed so much of that work in my last year at Manhattan. And so I found Dream. And as I've said, I was able to do a lot of that there. And all of the times that I was able to work on the sports piece of Dream's work, which was a lot of partnership work, some alumni work, and a lot of their brand building work. The development office started a partnership with Jalen Brunson's Second Round Foundation, and the major gifts office was able to secure funding from Under Armour and Curry Brand and things like that, which were pretty frequent for Dream, but not as frequent as maybe I would have liked them to be because that was the work I loved. All of that just reinforced like you can actually do this like all the time. This is the work that you love, and you're putting all those pieces of everything that you love together through these types of projects. So late last year, I had the ability to go back and get my professional certificate in sport philanthropy from GW's program. And I also had the ability to kind of rejoin Columbia Sports Management program. I'd graduated from there in 2017 and be on the faculty, sometimes a course assistant, sometimes a lecturer, but really like rejoin that community and be in the classroom again and on campus again and going to their events and networking again. So organically through the end of last year, I just decided like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start my own company. I'm going to use everything that I've learned over the last 15, 20 years as a communicator. And I'm going to help nonprofits who don't have that communications muscle yet figure out how to get it. And I'm going to be giving them the best return on investment, showing them strategies that they don't have to have, a $200,000 budget for comms. They can still do things consistently and authentically. They can amplify their voice in a way they haven't before. They can streamline their brand and have more brand consistency. And all of these things are going to lead to more funding, better aligned partnerships, longer term partnerships, because they have a better strategy behind telling their story and doing it in a way that's authentic and consistent. So that's what I'm doing now. It's been wonderful. I never, ever, ever thought that I'd be a business founder and business owner. Still shocked by it every day, but I knew that I would do anything I could to do this work specifically. And if I couldn't find it full time, I was going to make it for myself. And so far, it's been so eye-opening and wonderful. The people I've gotten to work with have been amazing. And it's also given me the ability to work across different types of sport for good, youth programming, women's empowerment through sport, adaptive sports, grassroots, local sport for good organizations just trying to get off the ground. It's really stretched me in ways I didn't expect, and I love it. And so I hope I'm giving as much to my clients as they're giving to me. And I think the future is very bright for this kind of work. I think I'm also doing a little bit of educating people on the importance of communications and being an advocate for what communications can do for an org. Because as much as we all have access to be communicators, not everybody understands the power that they actually have at their fingertips if they just think strategically about how to do it and what it will look like long term. So yeah, so it's exciting. It's great. I love it. It's led me to great people like you. So I hope it can, be longevity for me. And I hope that I can just create an impact in this space that I love and that I want everyone to just be a part of and invest in.
And most definitely, what really gets to me too is you have a passion for what you do, and you found a way to go ahead and go all in and take this leap of faith to do it. And that is what I'm so proud of, to hear your story and to see the journey that you're on right now. It really is exciting and so fun. And I mean, what you were able to gain from it, but what your clients are able to gain from it too is so important as well. And for someone listening who wants to break into sports for good, what is one thing you'd tell them?
I think what I've found is that sport for good can really be anywhere. So I know, thinking about it from a job market perspective, I know the job market right now is strange, for lack of a better word. I know a lot of people who are looking for new roles or trying to transition. It's not been the easiest. And so I want to be transparent about that. But I think that because of the way that sport philanthropy is in our country and utilized in our country, there are so many different areas that you could focus on and try to find a role in that could give you that ability. I found that at Dream. Dream really, if you look at it on paper, is an educational organization. But I was able to find my niche there, and it led me to doing this. You could work in corporate communications or corporate in general, and you could be put on an account that is more aligned with sports sponsorship. And then through those sports sponsorship, there's a sport for good aspect to it. Similarly, if you worked for a team or a league, and there could be sport philanthropy opportunities within that organization as well. So it might just take a little bit more digging to try to see if those opportunities will be there, if and when that's something that you want to pursue. College athletics, same thing. Working at schools. If there's a school out there that has a really robust sport programming side of it, and you want to be a part of that. One that comes to mind is the Earl Monroe Renaissance School in the Bronx. They teach students the business of sport. Basketball particularly. And so all of their educational side of things is all geared towards the sport business world. So really that's a melding of youth sports, education through sports, and then you have the sport business side. So it might just be open up your mind a little bit, be a little creative. And then I would say too, and I hate suggesting that people work for free. It's not really what I would preach to my students, but I do think volunteer opportunities are really valuable. Nonprofits really don't have the budgets all the time to, open up their doors to pay someone to do something. So if you have the time, and as we all know, working in philanthropy, you have to be a little philanthropically minded when it comes to your time and energy. So volunteering at the Special Olympics, volunteering at, a college sports event fundraiser, just getting your name out there and getting people to see that that's something that you're interested, that could really open a lot of doors. It might not be something that you have to do long term, but you also might enjoy it. So I would say if you're not already doing that, try to find some volunteer opportunities that will give you also just a little bit more insight into what this world looks like. So those are, I think, kind of basic things. I'm also happy to have a conversation with anyone that's interested about any ways I can help. I want to always be paying it forward, and we need more good people in this space. So if there's anything that I can do, I'd be happy. And yeah, I think it's just, you will find it if you're looking for it, I think.
Most definitely. Well, Kelly, I mean, thank you so much. Loved learning so much about your journey and where you've come and like the advice that you were able to offer everyone too. And it's truly been such a pleasure talking to you. And I can't wait to see what's next.
Thank you so much. And I just have loved getting to know you and love everything that you're doing. I think it's, as a storyteller, so important to be showcasing the people working in all of these different spaces and how they literally took something that they were passionate about and made it into, fruition, into real life for them. So I hope that you keep elevating everyone's stories. I'll be listening. And just thank you for your time too.
Thank you so much. If Kelly showed us anything, it's that trusting yourself can change everything. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a review. And I hope her journey inspires your next move. Until next time, I'm Kyle, and I'll see you again. Take care.